This is the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast, the #1 place for people who want to launch on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. My name is Nalin, and I invite you to join me for tips, hacks, and insights to get you launched and fully funded. Hey everyone, welcome to another session of the Crush Crowdfunding Podcast. I'm really excited to have you here today and to really talk to you about crowdfunding and how you can absolutely crush your goal on Kickstarter and absolutely crush your goal on Indiegogo. Okay, so I want to talk about Facebook ads specifically because this past week I was talking to someone actually who made a really crucial mistake. How they created the ads was, okay, actually, let's back up a little bit. Why are ads important? Okay, why are ads important? So ads are important because for Kickstarter or Indiegogo to be successful on when you launch the campaign, you need to have a dedicated audience already. You can get a dedicated audience for your crowdfunding campaign in the pre-launch phase by using paid strategies like advertising, finding the right people and bringing them into your audience or crowd, or non-paid strategies that we've talked about before, organic marketing, things like that. Today, I wanted to focus on this paid strategy in this early pre-launch phase of the entire crowdfunding campaign because a lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people don't know it. There's a lot of questions people have about it in particular. So this past week, I was working with this person who was setting up his ads and running some ads already. And there was, a crucial mistake. What he did was created one campaign, created one ad set, and created one ad, right? One campaign, one ad set, one ad. The campaign was, targeting like $20 a day, doing optimization for each and every single type of placement. The ad set was targeting one audience only. And the ad itself was just one image, one text, one of everything, right? So why is this right or wrong, right? So he mentioned that he did this because he heard about A/B testing. He heard about the need to test one against the other to see what works, what doesn't work. And so he's implementing this one campaign, one ad, and one ad set so that he'll get data for the first few days and then create another campaign, another ad set, another ad, so that he can test one against the other. The first one that he's running now, and the second one that he's going to run a little later. So the pros of this is that he is doing A/B testing, right? Great. However, the structure of how this is being built needs to be updated. So what does it actually mean to do A/B testing for ads? Right? You've probably heard about A/B testing. You've probably seen people write about it or talk about it elsewhere. So A/B testing for ads is really important. And A/B testing is basically having two or more different variations of something and making sure that you have like one control and changing the other variations, one thing about the other variations, so that you can test if the control or the other variation works better, okay? So when it comes to advertising, rather than creating one campaign, one ad set, and one ad, the best thing to do is to get Facebook, the platform, the marketing platform, the advertising platform, to actually be testing that for you and working on that for you in real time. So what that actually means is you should have one campaign for your pre-launch, right? One campaign. And for the ad set level, have multiple ad sets with that one campaign. What this allows you to do, what this allows Facebook to do, is test the different audiences against each other right away, right off the bat, right? So your first campaign at the top level should be, hey, I'm doing a pre-launch for lead captures for a US market, right? And so within that, you can test different audience types. So let's talk about maybe like a yoga product, right? Super easy, super simple yoga product. Maybe you're going to test people who like to go out and run triathlons and they need to do yoga as like an exercise or a physical movement that keeps their body toned, lean, stretched, right? So that is one type of audience you want to test. The second audience that you might want to test with like a yoga product, for example, is maybe like brands associated with yoga. Brands like Lululemon, right? That can be another ad set that you're testing one against the other. And the third one that you might want to test might be things like the Calm app, the Headspace app, anything that helps you do yoga, breathing, mindfulness exercises, right? So that is in the ad set level where you're testing different audiences against each other using this A/B testing structure, right? So as you remember, campaign, there's one campaign. And within that campaign, Facebook is going to be testing all these three audiences against one another so that you know which audience is the most receptive to your product, to your information. The first thing was the campaign. Second thing is ad sets. If you have multiple ad sets, have different audiences associated with those ad sets. So Facebook will be optimizing one against each other. So you'll know exactly which one is going to give you the best cost per lead, which audience is going to be the most interested in your project and also in your project for Kickstarter, for Indiegogo. Yeah. And on the third level here, which is the ad level, right? Remember, the first person I was talking about that made this mistake had one ad. Always have more than one ad, right? Always have more than one ad because you need to know what is working for each of these audiences, optimized even down further, right? Is it going to be a still image? Is it going to be carousel ads? Is it going to be video ads? Is it going to be ads for with different text, different headline, right? There's so many different things you can do to test, right? So on the campaign level, one campaign, the ad set level, multiple ad sets. So you're testing audiences against each other. And the third thing is the ads, right? Test different types of ads against each other within each of these audience ad sets so that you're able to run all these experiments of, you know, what works, what doesn't work, so that you know what will get you the best cost per lead, right? And when it comes to like cost per lead, right? What is cost per lead? Cost per lead is literally what you're paying to get one person to sign up for your email list, right? And that is pretty much the main key performance indicator, KPI, that you should be looking at when you're running advertising, right? There's all these things like click-through rates, there's cost per click and things like that. But the main thing that we typically look for as advertisers, as marketers for pre-launch phase is that cost per lead. Are you getting someone who is interested in your project and wants to sign up to be notified of its launch for a reasonable amount of money? And what that tells us is that if it's high, if the cost per lead is high, if it's like $5, $10 cost per lead, it tells us a few things. It tells us that one, the people you're targeting aren't excited about this. So it's probably not the right group of people. It could tell us that the landing page might not be the most sexy or attractive to bring people in to actually get them to subscribe to your email list, right? So the cost per lead is really, really important. If it's a lower cost per lead, what we look for is around $1.50 to $2 cost per lead. If it's a lower cost per lead, we see that it's probably the right audience, right? It's probably the right audience. They're the right psychographic. They're the right people, and they're coming here and they're like, oh, it's going to launch on Kickstarter. I can get a percentage off. I'm on the list. I get notified when it launches. Yes, let me put my email down there. Right? It tells us that this is the right people. Right? You're targeting the right audience. You're on the right path. Okay. So that's the cost per lead. It's really important. There's a question here. What do you think about having one ad that runs for a really long time so that it can learn a super duper scary amount about your audience? A super duper scary amount. I love it. Ads that run for a long time are great. And ads that run for a long time are great because, as you said, they can learn a super duper scary amount about your audience. However, there is this thing called ad fatigue that is very, very real with any ad that runs for a long time. And ad fatigue is basically people in your audience bucket, whatever your audience bucket is, when you're creating the audiences, they'll start seeing the ad more and more and more. The frequency will start going up and up and up. And the higher the frequency within that audience bucket of that one ad, the lower the performance gets for that ad. And that's why when you run the same exact ad for a very long time, sure, Facebook is like optimizing it, blah, blah, blah. But within that ad bucket, you'll start seeing the frequency go up and the effectiveness of it go down. And so you'll need to have some backup images, backup text, backup just variations of that same ad so that you have less ad fatigue in the long run. But if it's working right now in the short term, right, in the month, 2 months before launch, for example, if it's still working, great, go ahead. However, if you start seeing frequency go really high, you start seeing performance drop, it's pretty much when ad fatigue starts coming into play, right? So that's a great question. Okay, so just back to kind of what I wanted to talk about today too, is those mistakes from that first person, that first example, okay? The audience. They had one audience that they were testing. One audience, just one audience. For every ad campaign that you're running, especially for the pre-launch section, make sure that you have multiple audiences. Make sure you have multiple audiences that are running at the same time, okay? Because a lot of the time, you don't know which audience is actually going to work. You might have something in your head that will work, but maybe that's not the right one. So when you're creating audiences, before you go on to the ad platform to like mess around with save audiences and like all these targeted interests, like take a step back. Think about your person. Like, who is your main person that you want to talk to? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What are their habits? What brands do they like to use? What do they like to read? What do they like to do in their free time, right? Start crafting this idea of who this person is and start bucketing them. Okay, so like to go back to a yoga product, coming back out, right? We can think about, okay, they might like reading magazines like Goop, right? They might like reading magazines like Men's Health or Women's Health. They might like brands like Lululemon, maybe even Under Armour, right? In their yoga line, right? They might like to use apps like Headspace or Calm. They might like to go hiking on the weekends to change up the type of exercise. They might like to do meditation. So maybe meditation, transcendental meditation, there's all these types of meditations, right? So a lot of these things are very associated with the yoga space. And so before you go into the ad platform to create these ads itself, take a step back, write all this down and group them into little buckets. So for this, and each bucket is going to be a type of audience that you're going to be targeting. So like one is going to be just yoga brands, right? Another is going to be all these types of meditations that people could do. The other one's going to be all these like magazines that they probably read, right? So all these different kind of psychographic information becomes the gunpowder that you put into a cannon fodder. I think maybe that's what you say. Anyways, it becomes your arsenal for creating ads, pretty much, creating audiences, pretty much. So a lot of people skip this part and go straight into the ad platform and just kind of start looking around, see what happens. Okay. So make sure you take that step back and look at your audiences first before you go in and create those ads. And you should have like 3 to 5 audiences at the ready to start. Catalyst is a good word. 3 to 5 audiences at the ready for your ads. Okay. And another thing that a lot of people do wrong. Okay. And I really, really want to talk about today. Okay. Is they make a billion landing pages for each of their billion audiences. And they're like, okay, if this person has this background and this ad appeals to them, I'm going to send them to landing page 1, audience 1 to landing page 1, audience 2 to landing page 2, audience 3 to landing page 3, audience 4 to landing page 4, and on and on and on and on. Okay. The problem with that is at the end of the day, Kickstarter and Indiegogo has one page. There's one page you're sending everybody to, one page. And there's no way you can create a million different campaign pages for a million of these audiences to optimize for conversions, people backing your project on the back end, right? When you're on e-commerce, when you're doing product sales directly, sure, you can have a million product pages for the different audiences. That's totally fine. But when it comes to crowdfunding, you can't do that. And so strategically speaking, it's not in your best interest to have one ad go to one landing page add to, go to the second landing page, and so on and so forth. Because in the long run, when you're getting people to pre-order, everything is general, right? You're talking to a like specific but general audience. And so if you work backwards, right, into your pre-launch phase, when you're doing pre-launch ads, when you're collecting all these people, you want to have one main landing page, okay? Because that'll kind of replicate what you have for your Kickstarter page. You have one landing page, and you want to send all these people to that one landing page using pretty much very generic ads in a way to send them to one landing page. And you want to see on the front end who is actually responding to that, right? Who in these like 5 different audience groups that you have are responding to that landing page. Because you'll know that if group C responds most to the landing page and you're getting the best cost per lead with group C, for example, on that landing page, you're going to know that group C is probably going to be the one to convert the most on your Kickstarter page or on your Indiegogo page on the back end, which means that you could start optimizing in the front end for that. And you could start tweaking your language just a little bit, so that it comes so that group C will convert the best. Okay. So this is how you can use data to really amplify what you're doing and really just kind of niche down where it will make the most sense for you in the long run. A lot of people like to go general. Okay. A lot of people like to go general, but at the end of the day, marketing works when it's the right message to the right person at the right time in the right channel. Okay. And if you're seeing that marketing message that you're talking about for your product work for this person, then optimize for it. Keep going with that, right? Keep moving forward with that. Okay. So that's kind of the big things I wanted to talk about today. Let's see if there's another question that came in. Targeting the same audience as Facebook identifies them, right? You can use things like lookalike audiences for Facebook. And typically the lookalike audience buckets are like pretty big. Like the first percent is like 2 million people in the US, for example. So that audience bucket, it's really big. So you can continue targeting that same audience within the lookalike audiences. But at the end of the day, ad fatigue still happens and you still have to update or change that audience in some way. Well, this is what I wanted to talk about today because I saw this happen just this past week and I wanted to make sure to tackle this early on, right? Person who did one campaign, one ad set, one ad. So we talked about the structure of ads, how to actually structure an ads, creating an audience, coming back out, writing this down, creating buckets, and then going into the platform and creating one landing page that translates to one Kickstarter page. And so you're not doing specific ads, going to very specific landing pages and why that is important. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Crush Crowdfunding podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful in any way, be sure to leave a review so that other people will have an easier time finding this crowdfunding content. I hope that this podcast was helpful in your crowdfunding journey, and I can't wait for you to go out and crush it. Thanks for listening to the Crush Crowdfunding podcast at crushcrowdfunding.com. Tune in the same time next week for more ways to crush your launch.